Hello and welcome to the ID Talk podcast. My name is Peter Cantor and I am the Editor-in-Chief of FindBiometrics, where October is Financial Biometrics Month, presented in association with Money2020. This month we are celebrating the front lines of biometric innovation in our featured articles, our industry news, our virtual event coverage, and of course, right here on ID Talk. And that's why on today's episode of ID Talk, I am pleased to present Money2020 Editor-in-Chief Sanjib Kalita in conversation with FindBiometrics President Peter O'Neill. The conversation starts with a preview of the MoneyFest virtual event before taking a close look at the identity-related challenges facing the financial sector and how biometrics and strong authentication technology are addressing them. It's a fascinating conversation between two industry authorities on financial biometrics. So without further ado, I present Money2020's Sanjib Kalita in conversation with FindBiometrics President Peter O'Neill right here on ID Talk.
My name is Peter O'Neill and I am the President and CEO of FindBiometrics and Mobile ID World. And I'm here with my good friend Sanjib Kalita, who is the Editor-in-Chief at Money2020, the leading financial services fintech show. Sanjib, I've known you for many years, and I was actually thinking back to when we first met. I think it was about 7 years ago, and it might have been the first or the second Money2020 show back then. It was at the Aria, and maybe 2,000-3,000 people, way less than what are coming now. And there wasn't much about identity or biometrics. And I remember speaking with you and the team back then, and I must commend you and Money2020 for taking that discussion 7 years ago and recognizing that identity and biometrics were going to be a very important piece of the growth in Money2020 and in financial services. And you really have led the charge. Money2020 has led the charge, and that was 7 years ago. You recognize that. So congratulations on doing that. I just wanted to get that out there because, it really was quite something back then. There wasn't a lot of conversation around identity. You recognized it was important and really moved with that.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate it. And I'm honored to be part of this podcast. And, just sort of to respond to, I remember fondly meeting you, and I think that was part of the, that's part of the magic of an event is like, you can get different people who are thinking about looking at things in a very different manner. And you in particular were ahead of the curve. And you saw the market need that was going to develop. And you knew about some of the technologies, and you had that passion, and it's been my pleasure to work with you to continue to develop this on the Money2020 stages, and obviously you've taken it to a whole new level in the industry.
Well, thanks. And what can attendees expect from this year's virtual Money2020 event? It's called MoneyFest. Can you fill us in a little, please?
Sure, absolutely. So, I think the overarching idea behind Money2020 is to get people, regardless of geography, regardless of role, regardless of function, regardless of industry, folks that are interested in in disruptive innovation in financial services and fintech, get them all together to learn, to meet, and I think Money2020 has put MoneyFest together to help do this in a virtual fashion. So we're going to have 4 days. It's going to be over 4 days, half days of content with over 100 plus speakers, which includes 20 keynotes and 15 deep dive panels, and so that's part of the knowledge, if you will. And then for pass holders of 2019 as well as 2020, there's going to be additional exclusive content and networking. So trying to get some of the connections to happen, like you and I did 7 years ago at Money2020. And then additionally, we're going to have live Q&A and audience interaction because this does we want it to recreate as much as we can that physical event into a virtual experience. And last of all, it's completely free. We know everyone has been through the ringer this year. 2020 has been a long year, and with continuing challenges. And this is a little bit of our give back to the industry. And join us. There's no cost. Give us some of your time and engage with others.
And what are some of the big identity related challenges facing finance right now, and what conversations are they sparking or you anticipate them to spark at your show?
Yeah, no, there's been a lot going on, and I think one of the first things that comes up is digital onboarding, and with the pandemic, with lockdowns and limited ability to interact in a physical manner, digital has become that much more important. And so banks, lenders, additional institutions, how can you transform what has been a physical experience, for example, looking at a driver's license, looking at a credit card or what have you, and still being able to get that same level of security, same level of confidence, and same level of a frictionless experience, but getting that into digital. And so digital onboarding has been a huge topic of conversation. And next is sort of I describe it as pivoted customer experiences. And so even once your existing customers, they're used to working with companies because it's easy, because it's seamless, because it's a positive experience. And once again, it's been brick and mortar for many up till now. And so, how do you pivot that experience? How do you get your strengths and parlay them into a digital environment? And that sort of dovetails into fraud and risk management. In addition to all of the good actors in the marketplace, there's a lot of bad actors, and bad actors that might have been trying to do bad things in a physical sense are now doing it digitally, and increasingly so. So that puts a little bit more strain on those systems. And then, actually another interesting topic that dovetails off of this as well is privacy and security. And so I'm hearing companies that you wouldn't necessarily think about being interested in privacy, but that are now talking about it. So those are some of the things that I think from an identity perspective that are actually going to have fairly big impacts.
Well, and as you mentioned, especially now, and as I mentioned, we've been partners with you for many years, and it has been fascinating to track a digital identity, strong authentication, and biometrics through the various events that you've had globally. And we've also seen the rise of digital onboarding and the promise of biometric payment cards, which are coming to the market really rapidly. Behavioral biometric security is growing, and more. And we've seen these gain traction at your past events. What existing financial ID trends have gained traction in 2020?
Yeah, I guess first and foremost is that strong authentication has moved from a nice to have to a must have. And, so even if you might have been dabbling in it before, you might have been exploring certain biometric technologies for user experiences, and it might have been, okay, let's try this on a certain segment of customers. Now, organizations are realizing, okay, we need to expand this as much as possible. And this is being expanded in two ways. So, breaking it out into employees as well as customers. We've got globally distributed workforces or geographically distributed workforces as well as customers. And the authentication for employees, for example, is so important. And I think that's definitely something that I'm hearing a lot about. And obviously that has an impact on customers as well too. I think that there's another element that I think when we first spoke about 7 years ago, it was a little bit about, okay, well, there's an interesting voice recognition technology, there's an interesting company that's doing, say like fingerprints or facial recognition, and what I think is happening now is that we're seeing combinations, and by taking things in parallel and trying to combine some of these factors, biometric factors, we're developing stronger authentication methods. And so this is also another thing that I've seen, is that innovation and focus on the space has accelerated. If you are not on the boat right now, it's going to leave fairly quickly. And I do think that biometrics is a way to get seamless, help try to translate frictionless brick and mortar into frictionless digital experiences. And so I do think that there's a lot happening there. And perhaps a couple of more things that are maybe more in the periphery, but like self-sovereign identification and control, that has implications for regulation as well too. Additionally, encryption, as the rails become increasingly digital, there's some interesting encryption technologies that have been more theoretical up till now, that are probably that are starting to be used in market, and I think will increasingly gain traction over the next year or two.
Well, boy, you covered a lot there. It's interesting. We have also seen a tremendous increase in fraud. Obviously, that is quite a challenge with the pandemic. And I'm really happy that you mentioned privacy. I sit on the Data Privacy Advisory Board with the Security Industry Association, and I got to tell you, there is such a need for education around those areas. Large and small companies, as you mentioned, are really struggling right now to try and catch up. And it's not just financial services. It's interesting, though. I think the conversation has occurred at Money 2020 over the past 7 years, but now it's flooding into other organizations like healthcare, like remote work, which you mentioned, travel. All of these have become critical with the pandemic, and it's nice to see that you're continuing along. I'd like to delve a little deeper into the authentication comment that you mentioned. How do you expect businesses and institutions to adapt and evolve through this period of accelerated digital transformation? And what role will authentication and verification play?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think one of the things that, one concrete example that I can bring up is the PPP program that we've had in the States to help small businesses gain access to capital and in this time of need. So, for example, there were banks that wanted to be able to serve their small business community, but their existing processes didn't necessarily enable them to do so. So, I saw a lot of partnerships, being forged fairly quickly to enable financial institutions to onboard new technologies, new authentication technologies, and so I definitely think that because time is of the essence right now, I don't think that institutions are there thinking, okay, how do we build something? It's more, okay, there's solutions in market. How do we get the best in class and put them together into as seamless a customer experience as we can? And so I think that partnerships are going to be, have been, and will continue to accelerate. And you mentioned, sort of the how it's expanding into other industries. And I think that what I've also seen is that, there's a lot of organizational changes with resources being shifted towards, biometrically authenticating customers or employees, and to make sure that you're interacting with the right people. And I think where the risks are heightened and the opportunities are heightened right now. And I think that I think a lot of business leaders are recognizing that and putting their money where their mouth is. And then another piece that I've seen is that, authentication and ID verification have moved from single point to be spread throughout applications, because as more partnerships develop, as you're trying to bring in more API-based solutions into, throughout your corporation, there's going to be more authentication that needs to happen. And what that means is that the actual usage of each authentication ID tool is going to increase exponentially. Additionally, this means that since this is going to happen so much more, that puts an even greater onus on developing seamless experiences, how to integrate it into something that's embedded as opposed to like a road bump.
Very interesting. Just recently I did an interview with the company Idemia talking about their travel through the airport solutions, and like you say, it was totally seamless, quite remarkable. What we've talked about, the future holding, and all of a sudden it's here now. So it is moving quickly. And can you talk about some of the keynote sessions, and are there some on identity and authentication, and can you tell us about those?
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Idemia, and actually Idemia will have a really interesting session. Sort of the convergence of government ID, payments, and economic stimulus, and they're going to talk about how the crisis can accelerate innovation, and actually I think it's going to be a very topical discussion or presentation about exactly what we've been talking about, and why we're at the precipice of, I think, something quite large. And another big topic has been synthetic identity fraud. And that's for those of you not familiar, it's when rather than trying to take over someone's identity, you'll take bits and pieces of identities and stitch them together to make a fake person that can open an account and then do bad things that way. And so there's going to be a panel with about that that's going to include CentiLink, the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, as well as FinCEN. So I think that's going to be a very interesting conversation. And then there's going to be a topic, another session about the title, "The 5 Pitfalls of Relying on Embedded Device Biometrics for Mobile App Login," and that's going to be talking a little bit about digital and specifically mobile. We have these mobile biometric identification on our mobile devices, and digging into how safe they are and how organizations can use that in a manner to maximize security. And then finally, the session I wanted to highlight was about IoT and connected cars. There's going to be a very interesting session about by Discover and Car IQ about connected cars and IoT for completing payments, which I think it's a little bit science fiction, but actually the science fiction is becoming fact right now.
That's fascinating. Automotive is one of my favorite topics, that along with healthcare. But it's like the airport experience. It used to be future gazing, but it's here now because it must be here now. So fascinating. And Sanjib, thank you so much. How can listeners learn more about MoneyFest? How do they get involved?
Absolutely. So I think the easiest way is to go to money2020.com /MoneyFest, and there's information there. There's a button there to register, and like I said, it's free. So even if you're going to join for a couple of sessions, it's definitely going to be worth your while.
Well, thank you very much. Always such a pleasure speaking with you, and I wish you all the best at your MoneyFest event.
Thank you so much, Peter. I really appreciate it.
And so concludes our interview with Sanjib Kalita, Editor-in-Chief at Money2020. To learn more about MoneyFest and to register for the virtual event, visit Money2020.com. And for more Financial Biometrics Month content, stay posted to FindBiometrics.com. I want to thank Sanjib once again for joining us on ID Talk, and special thanks to Peter O'Neill for conducting the interview. Our podcast theme music is by Logomrad. I have been your host, Peter Counter. Thank you for listening to the ID Talk podcast.